Once again, another E3 has come and gone. After the E3-less year that was 2020, it was fun to see it return, at least in some form. It may not have been an in-person event, but that didn't dampen the spirits of those who like to spend months speculating about what we'll see at the show. And saw things we did. A lot of things. Unfortunately, a large portion of games that we saw this year gave us no indication of how they play. Just like every other E3, there was a slew of CG cinematic reveals that were fun to watch, but weren't very informative. So, as many of us like to do after E3, I've compiled a list of my favorite games that were shown. Naturally, nearly none of the games that had only cinematic reveals made it onto the list. Some on this list were revealed outside the formal E3 showcases and were just trailers dropped on YouTube during E3 week. So I'm counting those as shown at E3. Let's begin the list with my honorable mentions. My first honorable mention is Party Animals. As someone who plays a lot of party games with his siblings, Party Animals looks right up our alley. It looks like a more refined version of Gang Beasts with better controls and visuals. And to top it all off, you play as fuzzy animals beating the absolute snot out of each other. If I didn't know any better, I would have guessed it's being made by the same developers of Gang Beasts, but in fact it's not. This is one I'll keep an eye on until it releases next year, and like many on this list, it's coming to Game Pass. Next up is Mario Party Superstars. I'm looking forward to playing this for the same reasons I listed for Party Animals. It's a party game. I enjoyed 2018 Super Mario Party for the most part, but it just felt like something was missing. My biggest gripe with it was the game boards. They were far too small and not as interesting thematically as Mario Party's past. There were quite a few new minigames I enjoyed, but some duds in there as well. It looks like Superstars is remedying both of those problems. It's bringing back and remastering 5 classic boards from past Mario Party games and over 100 fan-favorite minigames from the franchise's history. It feels like it could be DLC for Super Mario Party, but Nintendo is gonna Nintendo, and they can't resist the prospect of charging another $60 for a whole new game. This 12th installment in the series comes to Nintendo Switch on October 29th. My third honorable mention is 12 Minutes. This was a game that caught my eye the first time they showed it last year. As it says in the trailer, it's an interactive thriller about a man trapped in a time loop. It sounds like Groundhog Day the game, where you have to repeatedly play through the events of a 12-minute cycle to gain new clues to solve a mystery. With a voice cast of all Hollywood actors like James McAvoy, Willem Dafoe, and Daisy Ridley, it seems Xbox has a lot of faith in this game and probably helped fund a lot of it. With it coming to Game Pass day one, I would be foolish to not at least give it a try. Closing out the list of honorable mentions is the sci-fi survival game Chernobylite, from developer The Farm 51. Chernobylite was a Kickstarter project that developed the game using 3D scans of the actual Chernobyl exclusion zone. It appears to be a game focused mostly around survival mechanics similar to games like DayZ, Rust, and 7 Days to Die. But unlike those games, this one actually has a story. You play as a physicist who used to work at the Chernobyl nuclear plant who is suffering after losing their spouse who returns to the site of the disaster in search of them. As with any survival game, you mainly gather materials, craft tools and weapons, and confront enemies. In the case of this game, the enemies vary from military personnel to supernatural beings created by the nuclear aftermath of the disaster. Like 12 Minutes, this is also coming to Game Pass this year. Now with the honorable mentions out of the way, let's get down to the brass tacks and go over my top 15 games of E3. Number 15 is Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. To celebrate the series' 20th anniversary, Sega is releasing a collection of the first 3 Super Monkey Ball games: Super Monkey Ball, Super Monkey Ball 2, and Super Monkey Ball Deluxe. They've been fully remastered for modern consoles and even recreated 12 minigames from the original versions of the games. It will also include 4-player local multiplayer, online leaderboards, and a time attack mode alongside over 300 remastered stages. As somebody who played the original game back on the original Xbox at a friend's house as well as the Game Boy Advance version, I can't help but be taken in by the nostalgia. I remember playing that game for hours on end. And since the series has never really reached the heights of those first 3 games with their sequels, it was a smart play on Sega's part to just remake the beloved games. It's better than trying to make a new one since they have consistently failed to recapture the magic of the early games. It's scheduled to be released on October 5th for all modern consoles and PC. Number 14 is Metroid Dread. So I'll be upfront about it. I've never actually played a Metroid game. I dabbled with Super Metroid on Nintendo Switch Online for a little while, and I think I played a multiplayer Metroid game like 15 years ago, but other than that I have no experience with the franchise. But after seeing the hype for this game, color me interested. I did some research and I wasn't aware that this was the first true continuation of the Metroid story in 19 years. Metroid Fusion in 2002 was the last new 2D one. Dread was a name whispered for over a decade after it was teased in Metroid Prime 3, and it was apparently restarted and cancelled several times. But judging by some of the reactions to the trailer online, this was one of the most mind-blowing surprises to ever come out of E3. Some even say Nintendo saved E3 this year due to this. Besides wanting to try out the game myself, I also want to buy it simply out of solidarity with the niche Metroid fan base, because they've waited so long for this, and presumably if it doesn't sell well, the franchise will disappear again for maybe another 19 years. Nobody wants that, so I'll throw some money Metroid's way to show Nintendo people still want this series. It comes out in October, so get hyped all you Metroid fans out there. Number 13 is Sea of Thieves: A Pirate's Life. Going into E3, I expected new content for Sea of Thieves because it's par for the course at this point, but I never expected it to make my list of best of E3. Having dabbled in Sea of Thieves dozens of times since the game launched, I've been waiting for a big update like this to give me a reason to jump back in. This reveal was really well done, and it's one of the most ingenious crossovers I've ever seen in a game. A partnership with Disney probably costs a pretty penny, but man will it be effective in getting new people to try the game. And it's free and coming soon. On June 22nd, in fact. Number 12 is Replaced. When they revealed this, I thought maybe it was a re-reveal of that game shown years ago at Xbox's E3 called The Last Night, just with a tongue-in-cheek new title. But no, it turns out it's a completely different game made by completely different people. It has a similar aesthetic to The Last Night, a cyberpunky noir setting with a gorgeous pixelated art style. I know basically nothing about it, and I'd like that to remain that way until I can get my hands on it when it releases sometime next year on Game Pass. Number 11 is Evil Dead the Game. As a fan of the Evil Dead film and TV franchise, the announcement of an Evil Dead game last year immediately piqued my interest. We got our first look at the game this year in a trailer that was dropped online and not shown at any of the E3 streams. From what we saw, it appears that they got Bruce Campbell to return as the voice of the iconic Ash Williams. And I'm not 100% positive, but it seems like they got the actors from the Ash vs. Evil Dead TV series back as well. You can play as Ash wielding his chainsaw hand and boomstick to fight off Kandarian demons and Deadites, pulled straight out of Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, and Ash vs. Evil Dead. It looks to be a PvP team-based game from what I've seen, with mostly melee combat but some guns thrown in the mix as well. I didn't expect some massive single-player epic from a goofy franchise like Evil Dead, so I expect this to be mostly dumb fun with your friends shooting Deadites in the face. Number 10, Somerville. As a massive fan of Playdead and their two masterpieces, Limbo and Inside, I felt something immediately familiar while watching the trailer for Somerville. Its 2D atmospheric art style invoked the dark, haunting vibes of those two games. As it turns out, my instincts were correct, sort of. No, it's not Playdead's next opus, but the debut game from indie developer Jumpship, headed up by Playdead's co-founder Dino Patti. If Dino's name is attached to a project, I am on board. After the absolute brilliance of Patti's work on Playdead's games, I have high hopes for this and expect another absolute banger, while I patiently wait for Playdead's next project. And to put the cherry on top, it's also coming to Game Pass, and it's expected to release in 2022. Number 9 is Far Changing Tides. This is a game I was completely unaware was being made until I randomly stumbled upon the reveal trailer while scrolling through Xbox's YouTube page during E3 week. It's the sequel to the brilliant puzzle game from Swiss indie developer Okomotive that released in 2018. The first game is a 2D puzzle game where you power a unique-looking vehicle to move yourself through a stunning post-apocalyptic landscape. It scratched that Limbo and Inside itch for me, and it's one of my favorites from the atmospheric 2D puzzle game quote-unquote genre that's gotten popular since Limbo's debut. It was a nice surprise, and what's even better is that it's scheduled for a 2021 release. Number 8, Back 4 Blood. Despite having never played Left 4 Dead or Left 4 Dead 2, I know, sue me, Back 4 Blood looks right up my alley. Shooting hordes of the undead with your friends is always a good time. But whereas this could be dismissed as just another zombie game, I think it's the pedigree of its developers and Left 4 Dead's legacy that is getting people interested. Turtle Rock Studios is developing the game, and they are comprised of former developers of the Left 4 Dead series. Honestly, this is probably the closest we will ever get to a proper Left 4 Dead 3, as this is basically just that but under a different name. Turtle Rock knows what they are doing by styling the title that way with the 4. Valve doesn't seem interested in making games anymore, so short of licensing out the IP name to Turtle Rock, this is ostensibly Left 4 Dead 3. After the commercial failure that was Turtle Rock's last game, the monster hunting co-op game Evolve, I think it was the right call for them to get back to their zombie roots, as people have been clamoring for a proper third game or a spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead 2 for over a decade. Mods have kept that game alive, but other similar games have popped up in the interim like Killing Floor 2. But Back 4 Blood seems to be poised to take back the crown as the king of co-op zombie games when it releases this October. And it's also coming to Game Pass. That was a huge third-party get for Xbox. Number 7 is Forza Horizon 5. I'm not really a racing game guy, but something about the Forza Horizon games really gets its hooks in me. Maybe it's the freedom of just being able to drive around in a huge, gorgeous environment with tight driving controls, and being able to participate or not even bother with races and time trials. It's such a chill game with no pressure placed on you to immediately jump into the next race. If you want to just simply drive around and enjoy the vistas while you listen to the radio, you can do that. It's a great game for catching up on podcasts or audiobooks as well. I don't know how on earth they could possibly top Forza Horizon 4, but something tells me Playground Games will succeed in doing just that. 3's Australia setting was my personal favorite, and I enjoyed the Britain setting of 4. The rumored setting for 5 was Mexico, and that indeed turned out to be true. It's the first Forza Horizon to be built for the ground up on Series X, and man does it show. The visuals are photorealistic at times, and I couldn't tell if I was looking at a game or actual footage of Mexico. Playground used photogrammetry to get 3D scans of the Mexico map, and Horizon has never looked better. While Turn 10 finishes making the next mainline Forza Motorsport game, Horizon 5 comes to Game Pass this November. My number 6 is Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. I was completely blindsided by this reveal for this at Square Enix's showcase, and it was kind of the only interesting thing at their show. I think I had heard rumors of this game being worked on a long time ago, but I sort of forgot about it. I gotta say, it's nice to finally be getting quality Marvel games now instead of bad movie tie-ins. It looks like with this game they are not making the same mistake as the Avengers game in that it actually has a story campaign with an actual ending. Avengers seem to be chasing trends by aping Destiny and Anthem and being an ongoing live service. This looks much more my speed. And just like the Avengers, the designs of the Guardians are quite different from their movie counterparts, showing that they are trying to do their own thing. It looks to be a third-person action-adventure game where you play as Star-Lord, which is pretty awesome. There are major choices that you can make, like in Telltale's Guardians game, but it remains to be seen if it will ultimately change the course of the story by the game's end. Square Enix's Guardians of the Galaxy is releasing October 26th. Alright, so we're down to the top 5 games of E3 for me. Number 5 is A Plague Tale Requiem. This reveal was the most excited I got during E3 because I had no clue developer Asobo was making a sequel to the brilliant A Plague Tale Innocence. I gave Innocence a shot last year when I heard nothing but good things about it and it came to Game Pass, and man am I glad I did. It's a third-person action-adventure game set in the time of the Black Plague where you play as a girl with her siblings trying to survive hordes of rats and the Inquisition. I went in completely blind and came away absolutely loving it. I wasn't sure how successful it was, so I was unsure whether a sequel was in the works, but as it turns out, there was. The first game was a 12-ish hour, pretty straightforward game, so I wonder if the sequel will be larger in scale, with Xbox presumably giving them more funding considering it's also coming to Game Pass. It's coming in 2022, so in the meantime, if you haven't played the first game, I highly recommend it, as I think it's a true hidden gem. Number 4, Atomic Heart. It feels like this game has been in development forever. Developer Mundfish seems to once every year or so reappear to drop another trailer and then disappear again for a while. They did just that, again here, with a pretty meaty trailer showing off gameplay of this very Bioshock-esque game. It truly does look like a very Russian Bioshock. I still have no idea what's happening in the game with no discernible plot shown off, but I'd like to go in blind anyway. Surprisingly, even after all this time, there was still no solid release date announced, but it is indeed coming to Game Pass. Number 3 is S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2. It is sort of strange to have 2 games based on Chernobyl coming out, but here we are. I never played the cult classic S.T.A.L.K.E.R, but I remember the hype last year when the surprise announcement for the sequel happened. I know absolutely nothing about the plot, but it looks similar to Chernobylite in that you are presumably exploring the Chernobyl exclusion zone, fighting off various enemies and looking for supplies. Honestly, it looks like Chernobylite with a much, much bigger budget. There's an angry Russian man that looks like Leon Kennedy, and a guy singing and someone playing the guitar, and I don't know what's going on. It looks absolutely stunning though, with ray tracing clearly enabled in the gameplay they did show. Russian Leon's facial animations and hair physics look truly next-gen. If it's anything like the Metro games, I think I will enjoy this immensely. S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 Heart of Chernobyl comes to Game Pass April 2022. My number 2 is Battlefield 2042. As a massive fan of the Battlefield franchise since the days of Bad Company 2, I'm always up for seeing what DICE has cooked up for the newest installment. But this one in particular will be something truly special, I think. After having no Battlefield games set in modern day in nearly 8 years, not counting Hardline, it's great that we're finally returning to the setting that Battlefield does best. After Battlefield 4 in 2013, they took a detour to the past with Battlefield 1 and 5, going to World War I and II respectively. It was a nice change of pace after many back-to-back games set in modern day, but I think most of the fans have had their fill of the World Wars, and are ready to go back to the days of Battlefield 3 and 4. As the title suggests, the setting this time is about 20 years in the future where soldiers call themselves no-pats and seemingly don't fight for one particular country. It's a world ravaged by decades of economic strife, social alienation, international conflict, and unprecedented Category 6 superstorms. I was very concerned at first hearing that it's a future setting, as I dreaded the idea of jetpacks, hoverbikes, laser guns, and other over-the-top futuristic gadgets that killed Call of Duty there for a while. But thankfully, it seems Battlefield 2042 is only using technology that exists today and will probably be more prevalent in 20 years, like Boston Dynamics-esque robot dogs affixed with machine guns. There is standard day weaponry and new tools like a grappling hook and a wingsuit to spice up the gameplay, and with tornadoes and sandstorms adding a new wrinkle to the classic Battlefield sandbox. I think Battlefield is set to take the crown back this year from Call of Duty. It has 128 players on absolutely massive maps and no campaign this time, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. See my other videos on Battlefield 2042 for why I think that. And it's coming this October. Man, October is absolutely stacked this year. And finally we come to my number one pick of E3 2021, Halo Infinite. Of course it was going to be Halo. I'm a die-hard fan. In years past, Halo never went more than 3 years without a new installment. But by the time Infinite releases this holiday, it will have been 6 years since the last mainline FPS Halo game, the extremely divisive Halo 5 Guardians. The entire Xbox One console generation will have come and gone with only one actually new title in the series. 2012's Halo 4 was the last one to garner mostly positive feedback. 343 has had a rocky history attempting to fill the massive boots left by Bungie's legacy. Depending on who you ask, some will say we haven't had a good Halo game since Halo Reach in 2010. As somebody who quite enjoyed most of Halo 4's campaign, and thought the multiplayer was a just okay first attempt by 343, I disagree that 343 has produced nothing but bad games. Halo 5 was the reverse, where I, like most other Halo fans, thought the campaign was the weakest one yet, but the multiplayer had some likable qualities despite moving away from what made Halo Halo by adding too many new movement options. So it's been nearly 11 years since the Halo community has had a satisfactory full package with a good multiplayer and campaign. But after this showcase and seeing their development progress in monthly blogs, I think it may be third time's the charm for 343, and it looks like they may have finally nailed it this time. After last year's worrying gameplay debut that showed lackluster visuals, the year-long delay turns out to have been the right call for the game as it's looking a lot better now. With the series going full open world for the first time ever and adding a grappling hook into the movement system in lieu of the divisive ground pound, boost, and shoulder charge of Halo 5, it looks to be a more natural evolution of the franchise. The art design and especially their armor designs looks like a perfect blend of Bungie's classic style with 343's modern Halo designs. The Master Chief has never looked better than he does here, and I hope that's emblematic of the quality of the overall game. I can't wait to finally get my hands on it when it comes to Game Pass this holiday season. And that's it. Those are my top 15 favorite games of E3 2021. And a few honorable mentions, of course. What do you think of my list? How does it compare to yours? Share your lists in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next E3.